We will fast-track development of our existing deposit at Mbamba Kilenda while we're concurrently extending the resource. And we will be doing that over the next 6 to 12 months to complete a DFS. We've done a desktop PFS in the past. The economics were quite nice, so we'll finalise that by DFS and push the first project into production. And then out at Kayeye and Lunga, we are looking for initial discoveries over the next 6 months. So investors won't have to wait long. Everything's ready.
Hello and welcome to the Assay TV, where today I am joined by Luke Knight, the CEO of Central Copper Resources. Central Copper Resources are a copper development and exploration company with a highly prospective landholding in the Central African copper belts, consisting of 3 main projects.
Thanks a lot, Katie. It's great to be here.
So as we know, Central Copper Resources is a private company, so a lot of information is in the public domain. So just for our viewers, can you give us a recap of the company's journey so far?
Yeah, sure, Katie. As you rightly point out, we're not listed. We're not in the public domain. Take a little step back. Our largest shareholder is a private equity fund called AMED Funds. They're Luxembourg-based, and they're geographically domiciled for investment in mineral and development projects in Africa. Now, you wouldn't be much of a private equity fund with that mandate, not have copper in the portfolio. Yeah. So they made a conscious decision going back 8 to 10 years to source copper projects in Africa. They teamed up with an exceptional exploration team, Ross McGowan and Tom Rogers, to help us source those projects. AMED generally keeps their projects private. Hence, in this instance, Central Copper is private. They've invested about $30 million in these 3 projects collectively over that period of time. So quite a lot of expenditure, quite a lot of geological work's been undertaken. I was probably the driving force to consolidate those projects together into one entity. So that's just a little bit of history. Yes, we are private, but quite a lot of work has been done, more than your average junior, I tend to think.
Excellent. And in terms of your management team and yourself, can you give us a little bit of a background there too?
Yeah, I'm actually talking to you from Perth today. I moved back from Africa to Perth in August last year, but I've spent about 18 years of my adult life in Africa. So it's in my blood. It's where I've operated. Started in the mining industry in Africa back in the late 90s in Sierra Leone in the diamond industry. Then did some time in Argentina in the gold industry. I started a platinum exploration company with 2 other partners in the late 90s in South Africa called Platinum Limited. That's now called Setabelo Platinum Mines. It's in production. We were highly successful. We ended up listing it, and it sort of peaked at about a 1 billion Canadian market cap. I actually sold out in 2006. Took about 8 years off, monitoring my own portfolio of investments. Retirement's not all it's cracked up to be when you're young. So AMED Funds, the private equity fund I mentioned, pulled me back in the game in 2014 to monitor their portfolio of investments in Africa. Initially based in London for a couple of years. I didn't like London that much, to be perfectly honest. So I moved in 2016 to Cape Town to head up their African office. Now, I'm the CEO of Central Copper Resources and have been since November 2021. Before that, as I said, I worked for AMED Funds. But I've got a long history with all of these projects as the monitoring officer for AMED when they invested in them. So going all the way back to 2014 on the flagship asset. Now, the rest of the management team is focused on mineral and exploration in Africa. So Tom Rogers is my exploration advisor, the partner of Ross McGowan, who helped to source these projects. Now, Ross and Tom actually won the PDAC Award in 2015 or jointly shared it for the discovery of Ivanhoe's Kamoa-Kakula. A very long history of exploration and development throughout the whole copper belt, considered experts in the field. So when you're an exploration company, you need the right technical minds on the job. Patrick Ngoy is my head of finance, actually educated in South Africa, but a Congolese citizen. He's actually heading back in a month to Kinshasa to be country manager for CCR for our operations there. And then we're rounded out by Heinrich Schultz, an attorney by trade, and also our company secretary, with a lot of experience in mineral and development projects throughout Africa, and particularly Southern Africa. The board itself is dominated by shareholder representatives. We've got Rudolph de Bruin and David Twist, they're founding partners of AMED Funds. Dion van der Mescht used to be the head of DRD Gold, and he's a mining engineer, so he pads at our board as we push towards production on our principal asset. And then, of course, Ross McGowan, who I've touched on, who is a PhD geologist.
You have 3 projects. I think it's probably best to start with your flagship West Congolian project. What's happening there? What's the status currently? And what are some plans moving forward?
Yeah, that's our most advanced project. Now, that's not traditional copper belt. It's a little bit different. It's in the West Congolian belt, which is one of the copper belts that is in Central Africa. The one people are used to is the main copper belt that straddles DRC and Zambia. So this is a relatively new area. The project area itself was discovered by the Belgians in the 50s and 60s last century. And then it sort of disappeared for a while and people forgot about it. We actually did research at the University of Liège, discovered this deposit that they drilled in the 50s and 60s, and then secured a joint venture with a local partner that held the license in that area. Now, initially, we just had the one license. And I was actually out there in 2016, and an old Congolese geologist told me the fault structure that determines our mineralisation runs for another 85 k's. Now, we'd only drilled 4 kilometres at that point in time. So I basically told them to stop drilling and go get me the rest. It took a while to put that package together, but what we've got there is 12 adjacent exploration licenses adjacent to our exploitation license on our existing resource that straddles that fault structure for 85 kilometres. So very exciting. There's lots of work to be done on the adjacent license areas. We do have an existing target there called the Senge target, which has high-grade lead and vanadium that was also discovered in the 50s and 60s. And then we've got our principal deposit, which we call Mbamba Kilenda. That's a high-grade deposit. There's 400,000 tonnes of copper there at an average grade of 3.12% at a 1% cutoff. And what it does have, which is interesting, is an exceptionally high-grade core. So about 40% of that is in excess of 18%. Now, that mineralisation is actually open to the east and the west. Now, we've spent about $20 million to date drilling that deposit and doing a bunch of other work in the project area. So we know and understand the geology very well. And very excited about the next round of work, which is to extend that mineralised envelope, along strike for another 5 to 10 kilometres. So an exciting project for us. It's our most advanced project. I've done a desktop PFS, which had quite good results on the existing resource. So, but then, as I say, highly, the exploration potential adjacent is very nice as well. So quite an exciting project for us, and certainly the most advanced.
Excellent. And your second project, which is your Kayeye project, in an interesting place as well, which is adjacent to Ivanhoe's Kamoa-Kakula project. Can you talk about that a little bit to us?
Yeah, I think that's what people define in this industry as blue sky potential. So that's a very exciting project there. It's 231 square kilometres. It straddles the domain boundary between the traditional thrust and fold belt, which is traditional copper belt, in the area that's known as the Western Foreland. The Western Foreland's where Ivanhoe's Kamoa-Kakula project is located. We are directly adjacent to that on the domain boundary. I think everybody knows Kamoa-Kakula is the single biggest copper discovery of the last 40 years. And as I mentioned before, our exploration team shared the PDAC award and put the first drill hole into mineralisation there in the past. So we've got the perfect team to develop that project. We have done some work to date. We have done some drilling, and whilst we haven't had a mineralised intersection, it is a large project area. We believe we've proved geological continuity with Kamoa-Kakula. And the next round of work out there is going to be to do some geophysics, to look for upthrusting and updome structures, and follow on drilling to go with the drilling that we've already done. And we're looking for initial discovery out there, actually.
So we have to mention the third project as well, your Lunga project in Zambia. What's the status there as well? Yeah, Lunga's early stage exploration. It's in a quite exciting area. So it's not in traditional copper belt of Zambia around Kayeye and Ndola. It's about 220 kilometres to the southwest. It's in a known base metals region. There's a lot of activity in that region at the moment with Anglo American in their Arc Minerals JV. You've also got First Quantum in the area at the moment. There's a lot of known mineralisation deposits in that area that still need to be developed. So it's an exciting area for us to be working in. Our target there is a near-surface oxide resource for copper, something that can be put into production relatively quickly. We actually have an existing mine next door adjacent to our licence that has a high-grade near-surface oxide resource. We've gone in and done soil geochem out there, and we've got 3 very nice anomalies on the project area, about 20 times background for copper. That's exactly the sort of thing we'd be looking for a near-surface oxide resource. So we're quite excited by Lunga, as are other people who'd like to JV it, but from a risk versus return perspective, we need to do the next round of work ourselves.
So we're going to do some ground-based magnetic work, some geophysics out there in the next round of work, and then we'll follow up with diamond drilling to, have what we hope to be a first discovery in that project there. So quite exciting.
Obviously, all of this costs a lot of money as well, as you well know, and you're currently raising some capital. How much are you looking for in particular, and what are you using it for?
Yeah, it's an interesting story, actually. I think I mentioned at the beginning that AMED funds wouldn't usually list its assets, but I sort of subscribe to the 10-to-2 principle, where at a certain time in the cycle, listing can add significant value. When, we sort of picked where the copper market would be going quite some time ago, and it's heading in that direction. And I think, everybody's a bull and nobody's a bear when it comes to copper. So we did have an intention to list on the ASX this year, and we were prepared for listing in June this year. I think, as most people are aware, market conditions have deteriorated rapidly over the last sort of 6 months. I think there's only been 11 IPOs in Australia this year. I think 9 of them are underwater. So I made a conscious decision to withdraw from the listing process in April, May this year. And we're determined to raise money privately. As I said, we've raised 30 million historically on these projects. So we're going back to the private market. We're looking at raising $20 million US at a pre-money value of 50 million. We'd like to think this is the last cheap money for the company. We've got everything ready for an IPO good news flow. So the use of capital moving forward is either for discovery on 2 of the projects or extending our existing resource at Mbamba Kilenda. So pretty good news flow coming up.
Well, just to summarise then, I know you've just mentioned news flow, but for our investors and anyone who's watching, what are some of your key milestones to look out for in the next few months?
Yeah, I think for Central Copper Resources, I think our existing value is underpinned by that existing high-grade resource that we've got at Mbamba Kilenda. And then we've got some, what I'd like to say is, exceptional exploration targets. So we've got a nice pipeline of projects that we can develop over time. We will fast-track development of our existing deposit at Mbamba Kilenda while we're concurrently extending the resource. And we will be doing that over the next 6 to 12 months to complete a DFS. We've done a desktop PFS in the past. The economics were quite nice, so we'll finalise that by a DFS and push the first project into production. And then out at Kayeye and Lunga, we are looking for initial discoveries over the next 6 months. So investors won't have to wait long. Everything's ready in respect to the work programs. We've just got to raise the money, get out into the field and complete the work. So very exciting time ahead, and we'd like to think we're going to add considerable value for investors that come in now over the next 6 to 12 months.
Excellent. It certainly sounds like an exciting few months for CRR, and we can't wait to catch up again when things move forward. Thanks for joining us.
Very, very, very thank you all for having me on. Much appreciated, Katie. Cheers.